Hey there, and welcome to YAS, a stripper podcast. On this podcast, we'll discuss how classifying each other as people and workers is dangerous to society and marginalized groups of people. We'll also talk about the climate in and outside of the strip clubs and all of the amazing things that strippers do. And of course, we'll talk about all of the things in between. I'm your queen, A.M. Davies, and this is YAS, a stripper podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for tuning in. I am AMD, your host, and I, this week's episode is a difficult subject. There's trigger warning. If any of you are mothers, parents, however you identify that maybe struggling with child custody for whatever reason. But that is the topic of today's episode. Um, we had I just got done speaking to two mothers who are both really amazing people, Honey and Luna, and about their struggles with their child custody, mainly due to the fact that they're sex workers. In fact, probably only due to the fact that they're sex workers. And I've known a lot of strippers, sex workers that are mothers over the last 2 decades. And this is a story that I've heard all too often where the fact that the mother or the main caretaker in the relationship is a sex worker is often villainized, and their profession and job is weaponized basically as a way for the other party to get what they want. And I am not a mother myself, and I am furious by these stories that I hear, and I'm often heartbroken because um, even though I'm not a mother, I care very greatly and very deeply for children. Um, and it's, it's I want nothing more for the children of this world to feel safe and be well taken care of and grow up in the love of with their family and with people who make them feel safe and that share the care that they need to grow up to be joyful and grow up to be a part of this world that we're all in together in a way that feels good to them, because I love human beings at the end of the day, no matter what your age. And so I felt it was really important to have this conversation, so that more people out there in listening land can hear and understand what goes on, what happens for parents that are sex workers, specifically women and mothers, and how the system fails them and fails the children. Um, I'm apologize. This is a difficult opening to get through because it's an emotional topic for me because um, I just care very deeply about what happens to families. As family is so important. So this episode was made so that any of you out there listening might have suggestions, words of support for these mothers, um, and any ideas for how do we combat this issue and what can be done for people like Luna and Honey when they're experiencing these types of circumstances around their children. So I'd really like to stop talking so that we can hear the voices of the mothers, their firsthand experience of what life has been like for them and for their children and their resilience, because that is what really shines through when I speak to them in general and on this call is their resilience. And I'm in awe of their courage and strength. So here we go. Here is Honey and Luna.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm AMD, your host of this amazing podcast that you tune into every week, and thank you for that. And this is a very special podcast recording this week. We have two very important special guests with us this week named Luna and Honey, who are going to be talking to us about motherhood and being a sex worker and what those two things mean. Before we get to our hosts, I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sending in your donations because this is a listener funded show as of now. And through your donations, we are now able to pay our guests, and we're finally there. And so, thank you so much for that. And if you have not donated yet, but you do listen to this podcast regularly, please consider donating because your money goes towards the amazing guests that we have here that are always strippers and always sex workers and who deserve and need our support always, all the time. So please donate to paypal.me/yes, a stripper podcast, or you can visit our website at yesastripperpodcast.com. So without further ado, I'd really love to introduce you to our two guests today. We have Luna and Honey. Say hello, Luna. We'll start with you. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. And Honey, can we hear your voice?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
You both sound wonderful. You're coming through perfectly. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Fun.
you.
Yeah.
Glad to
So
be here.
thank you. And I'm so glad that you're here. And I'm honored that you're willing to have this conversation on this podcast because this is a very sensitive conversation. And I would like to set our audience up by saying that the point of this particular conversation is specifically, Luna, what you've been going through recently. And the reason that we have Honey here with us is because Honey is also a mother and a sex worker. And I felt like it was very important to have this dialogue with mothers. And I myself am not a mother of humans. And so I don't have the same knowledge and experience that these two women have. And so that's why we're here today. So I'd like to start with you, Luna, with just a little bit of background, sort of a rundown of what you've been going through, and then we'll start to sort of like go through the things subject by subject in more depth. So go ahead.
All right. So July 9th of this year, it'll be 1 year since I left a 3-year abusive relationship. Um, and I ran away with had no shoes. He took my cell phone from me. And then I came back a few days later to grab Roman. And then I had Roman for about 2 weeks. I had him in daycare, a daycare that was nice with his brother. And then Lisa and I were going to go camping. And so he agreed to watch Roman. And then that was the last time I saw Roman for about 6 weeks, I believe it took until I saw him again. And it's just been happening. Every time we have court, it's 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
So you don't get to see your son. You're seeing him every 6 weeks, is what you're
Yep,
saying.
it's very sporadic, and every time we do have court, it seems like it's 6 weeks before I see him.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to say that I don't want to see him. That's very
Mm-hmm.
false. I am just heartbroken over this.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of why you can't see him right now is because of what happened in court recently, right? Please share with us what you feel is appropriate to share, and please leave out what you feel like you need to leave out for your situation.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
Well, in court, the initial court, they found out that I had an OnlyFans page.
Mm-hmm.
And my ex was trying to say that I was a prostitute. His words, not mine. He and then he got the judge or the I'm sorry, the referee on his side, and the referee ended it with, well, I'm not a prude, but you're gonna get supervised visits. Oh, okay, that's interesting. You're not a prude.
Right.
And then I got a lawyer, and we had a trial, or a couple of like trial stuff before the trial. And then the trial was about almost 4 hours. 3 of it was them talking shit about me, everything they could about me, just throwing me under the bus. It was horrific to just sit there and not say a word and just be calm. And then the referee, he decided that I should not have my son at all, no physical, no legal custody, and that my ex should have our son full custody, and I should have every other weekend. And now, well, let me rewind. So he, once my ex got custody of my son, our son, he decided to get him circumcised. Our son is almost 3 years old. There's absolutely no reason for it. It is, so many people are understanding that this is just a thing that doctors are trying to push because they're trying to make money off of mutilating children. And it's such an evil, disgusting thing. And I believe he's doing it out of spite. And our child is the one who's gonna suffer in the end. Yeah, he's hurting me as well, but really our child is gonna be the one who's really harmed by this. So that happened. I don't believe he ended up getting the circumcision because a bunch of intactivist people, and I believe some sex worker people as well. I reached out to a bunch of people, you included, and we all we signed a petition and we protested right in front of the hospital. It was amazing. We had such great response. So many like, woohoo, good job. Yes, like we agree with you, honks. And it was a great, like compared to the negative, it was so much more positive. So that happened. And then we had because we didn't agree with what the referee said. Obviously, I don't agree that I shouldn't have my child. So me and my lawyer, we did a rebuttal in front of the judge. I didn't even get to say one word to the judge. And she says, no, I don't believe you were discriminated against. She read the whole transcript and I don't understand. I reread it and I'm like, these people really didn't like, but it was, yeah, I was shocked that she read through that and still believed that.
So, honey, I really want to hear your thoughts on the differences and similarities in your case, and I also want to point out to our listeners, without saying specifically where you are, that you're both in different states, and and the reason I'm bringing that up is because this is an issue that happens across the board. It's not like, oh, I live in a conservative state and this happened to me. No, this happens. And so what are the similarities and differences between your case and what happened to Luna?
Well, I will say that I am in Los Angeles. I feel like that adds to the story because it is a progressive city, and you would think that things like people are like, oh, like you're super in LA, it shouldn't matter. But so yes, I am from Los Angeles. It did matter in my case. Like, or I guess I should say it didn't matter where I was from in my case because they saw me, as just a stripper. But the we have a lot actually, and one of them is that my ex took my son for about a month before our custody battle, and it was when I was nursing and he was 11 months old. So by the time I had got my son back, I had no more milk. Like I was completely dried up of all of my breast milk, which was really physically painful and emotionally painful. And there was nothing I could do about it at that time because we had no custody agreement at all. And when you have no custody agreement and one parent takes the child, it's like, well, you have no agreement, so technically it's not illegal. And until you go to a hearing or whatever, they can keep him, keep him as long as he wanted to. And luckily, I had a case worker, a CPS worker who was helping me, surprisingly. And she had helped to convince him to give him back to me and let me see him, but we were still going to court. And then he had taken me to court, and I thought at the time, because you have to see a mediator before, I'm not sure if this is the same, but here in Los Angeles, you have to see a mediator first to see if you can mediate before actually taking it to court, because it wouldn't make sense to take up a whole court process if you can just mediate it there. So when I spoke with the mediator, and they speak one-on-one, and then if they decide that you're past that, then you'll speak together, and then you come to mediation. And we spoke one-on-one, and she spoke to me second, and she said, immediately, I can tell, I see this all the time. I've been doing this for a really long time. He is a typical abuser. They use the court system to, try and get your child. We see it. It's pretty much open and shut. She was chilling. She was like, we see this all the time. You're good. And I was like, well, what about my job? I'm a stripper. He says I do drugs, all these things. It's not true, but I am a stripper, and so it doesn't look good. And she was like, it doesn't matter. As long as you're working and providing for your child, that does not matter. Like, no judge is going to take a kid away from you because you're a stripper. So I went to court like, wow, the mediator said I was fine. Fuck you. Like, I was so confident.
Yeah.
And then when I walked in there, I realized, you know what? That judge is a person just like any other person who has biases against strippers, just like any other person. And she didn't read anything like it to the mediator. So it was so obvious, like, from what she said, open and shut, to the judge being like, I'm not even going to read your case because you work at a place at the time, Cheetahs. Like, what's this Cheetahs? Very obvious strip club. I told her what I did. I told her my hours. She did not like my hours, even though in my mind, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. is perfect mom hours because I get to spend my day with my son. It's short, it's nighttime. And I was trying to make that case, and she was not having it. She was looking at me like I was repulsive, and then pretty much was like, my heart dropped and said, all was said and done. And she said, what days would you like to visit your child? Tuesday and Thursday, or Wednesday and Friday, between 1 and 7. And like, and she's like, that's your options. I picked Tuesday and Thursday, and I was devastated, obviously. And I was in shock. There were people, when I left the courthouse, there were people who were waiting for their court proceedings to happen, who had come out, and they were like, I can't believe that just happened. That judge is crazy. Like, complete strangers were just in shock as well. And so it was something, especially going in with such confidence. I almost feel like the mediator like made me even more confident, being like, she's right, so it was a really fucked up thing to happen when it's not just Rupert. It's not just, the systems that are against people, even if systems necessarily aren't in the way, like it's not an actual law that's in the way. There are individuals that make up the justice system, that make up the family court system and CPS and all this stuff. And every individual is capable of having bias against strippers, and most people do. So, it's just, and fortunately in my case, my ex very quickly found out that he couldn't handle full custody, and I was homeless at the time. I was able to find housing, and he gave me my son more. And after literally a year of me having my son, half the time on paper it said I had my son every Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 7. So after a year of that, I finally convinced him. I'm like, listen, this is not cool for me. Like this, like I have him just as much as you do. I finally convinced him to go and fix the custody agreement. So now we still don't follow it because it's just, whatever, but it's 1 week on, 1 week off pretty much. I get an extra day. So it's 8 days and 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that it is. I do see the differences and similarities because I've spoken to you, Luna, about this as this has happened to you. And thank you, honey, for sharing all of that. And for Luna, you know, it doesn't sound like you had as much of positive support. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to speak for you actually, but your experience with like your lawyer, right,
Mhm.
was quite different, I think. And
Yeah, and
yeah.
in the county that we are in, or that we're having court in, they don't do mediation. And you
Okay.
have to write your own motions. They don't even, like, if you don't have a lawyer, they don't even just have like, you have to write it as if everyone just knows the legal language. It's so like, it's so like discriminatory. Like, how are people supposed to do that? And it costs a lot of money, and they only take cash, and they didn't tell me. Like, there were all of these things standing in my way. This is when I was trying to get the ex parte so Roman wouldn't get circumcised. Um,
You had to pay
but yeah,
money to go to court?
yeah, yeah, to write to I can't remember what it was. Oh, it was because I couldn't I didn't know my account number for my like DHS, so I could get the free, or they would waive the fee, and I couldn't do that because
Huh.
my friend, I literally had a friend on the phone who was like, "I've got the money," and I'm like, "I got the money," and they're like, "You have to pay cash," and I'm like, "Why wouldn't you have told me that like 30 minutes ago when I was trying to like rush around?" I'm bawling my eyes out. The cop yelled at me for crying. And I'm like, "Sir, crying is not a crime. Excuse me."
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Honey, you look like you know what she's talking about, and I just
Yeah,
don't.
you have to pay most in
Mhm.
court in general. Like a lot of times, you have to pay a filing fee. They will. And I guess also depends on what state you're on. Like filing fee is kind of like the basic stuff, and there could
Mhm.
be added fees depending on what you're going for and like what you need. But yeah, I think I honestly don't remember because it was such a tumultuous time. But I think because I was homeless, they waived my filing fee. Or when I also tried to file for a restraining order, and then he tried to file for a restraining order against me and the person I was staying with at the time. So yeah, there's a lot of different types of things in
Yeah.
court that you have to deal with and pay for, and with your time and money. Yeah, pretty much.
I'm sorry. I'm just like beside myself. Like imagining, okay, you're going through all this shit, and then I had no, because I've not been in the court system since I was 20 years old and got a DUI, which I very much deserved. But so but like I just didn't realize, and I think it's preposterous that we have to pay the courts. I'm just confused by that. And then yeah, that's bullshit. And I'm also like, when judges take an oath, like, isn't part of that oath to not discriminate? Or am I so ignorant?
I mean,
They're supposed to be impartial. They're supposed to be like,
exactly. Mhm.
impartial, the two hands, the scale. That's what they're supposed to be.
But yes, they're supposed to be partial, but it's like at the end of the day, they're like human beings. It's like, police
Right.
officers, right? It's like, oh, well, like they're good apples, bad apples. Like, yeah, but they're people are drawn to certain positions of power sometimes, and certain people in positions of power aren't always necessarily good people. And in my case, the judge specifically ended up because, well, first of all, she had only her history was in criminal law, and her area of expertise for judging was in criminal court. So it was very odd already, and the mediator had already mentioned that it was a newer judge, and it was very odd already that she was in family law. Like, and I was like, why is this lady? Like, why would you, after so long doing criminal law and criminal judging, why would you change your practice and do family law all of a sudden? And there is this, I forgot what it's called, but it's a kind of like a Yelp for judges. A lot of people, it was the same thing. It's like she treated every family case as a criminal case. Like there is a person who committed the crime and a person who's like, it's like she couldn't like separate, like there's someone who's wrong and someone who's right, rather than being like these are two people who, you know, can you like, there was just a lot. She's not in
Right.
family law anymore, by the way. She was only on the bench for about a year and a half or something like that. And when I went, I requested to have her changed, which you can only do in the state of California. You can only do one time in the span of 18 fucking years. You can only request a new judge one time. So I was gonna use that one time to request a new judge, and luckily, she was not on the bench
She had
anymore for
moved
family law.
on.
Whatever
Yeah.
happened, she had moved on, whether it was too many complaints or whatever. So
Yeah. Cut that. Luna, do you what do you think, and what can you share about like what was happening with your judge, and like maybe because like I find that really interesting. I feel like Honey's judge was almost like treating Honey like the criminal based on like, well, she might do drugs and she's, you know, a sex worker, and so in a lot of people's eyes sex work is criminal. So and it's almost like the judge was like, okay, so she's the criminal based on her
Right.
ignorant
Right.
experience, the judge's ignorant experience, which was a female, Honey?
Oh,
Yes, she
yes,
also was a female. Okay.
said she was an older woman of color, older Black woman.
Okay.
And I remember too also being very comforted when I went in there because of that. Because, you know, like for obvious reasons, I remember being like, okay, cool, she's gonna be awesome. And then just
Yeah.
even being like, oh, now I'm betrayed now. You know?
Yeah. So Luna, what can you share, like what you think were the headspace at, or like what your experience was regarding the judge and how it kind of went south for you?
Well, the first thing my ex filed first. So that was already, I'm screwed. And then the second thing that happened was I didn't know that we're having court until 4 hours prior. I got a letter, and I still found a lawyer within that time. I did, and
You had
she
4 hours?
accompanied me. Yes, and I found one in 3 hours, and then the last hour we talked, and then she
Oh, good for
accompanied
you.
me too. Dude, it was crazy. I found a lawyer that quick. Yeah. But no, he painted me as the whore who left the family home, which that was not the family home. We had just moved up there 4 months ago, or 4 months prior. And it was a referee at first, which is right below a judge. And then when the judge, who is a woman, the referee's a male, white guy. And the judge is a white lady, not older, but you know, middle-aged lady. And I didn't even get to speak to her one word. And she was like, no, you're not discriminated against. I don't see that my referee did anything wrong. I really believe that there's some type of stuff going on behind the scenes. People are friends, people are greasing wheels, because this all is insane to me. Every single person I talk to, they're like, is this for real? This really happened? This is really happening to you right now? And I'm like, yes, it really is.
The disbelief, right? Like the disbelief
either. Yeah.
when you tell people what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the people in the courtroom. Like everyone's just shocked. Like people really don't believe how cruel.
Yeah. I wish we would have almost had a real trial where real people would have looked at me and seen me. That's what I wish we would have had, because I feel like I could have talked to these people and they could have seen that I love my children and this is killing me, and I know this is hurting them as well. And I don't know why it's continuing.
I don't know why either, and you're right, it is hurting the children in a world where everyone seems so obsessed with taking care of the children. I feel like they're often the first ones that are hurt. And I'm so sorry that these things have happened to both of you and that are currently happening to you, Luna. And I I would like if we could share a little bit more about the support that you did receive and the protests that happened in front of the hospital, so that we can hear
a good, a positive thing
Mhm.
did happen, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Not to say that we need to hear the positive to fluff anything, but just to
Right.
show that there were
Finally got a win. It was
yeah,
nice.
yeah, and
Yeah.
people came through. So can you share with
Yeah.
us what that was like?
Yeah. I first started, well, first I talked to you. And then I did a petition. You and I started the petition. And then all these intactivist people started writing me, and I'm like, oh my God, everybody is like, I want to help you, I want to help. Oh my God, you're a poor baby. And I'm like, please help me. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so I got in contact with Norm Cohen of nosircofmichigan.org. He's so sweet, such a great guy. He sent me all this information in the mail to pass out to people. But yes, we got a lot of people. I think it was 1,660 people that we ended up with on the petition. And then we did protest the day of the scheduled circumcision for my child. And I believe at our height, we had 12 people. And we actually had two little children there too, a 4-year-old boy and I think she was 2 years, a little girl, 2 years old.
Nice.
They came all the way from Detroit.
Wow.
They drove all the way 3 hours to where I'm at. Two families drove that long to be
Wow.
supportive of me. It was just the outpour of love and care that the internet gave me. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
Yes.
I'm really
Yeah, it
glad that
was.
that happened for you. And I know that these stories often happen very differently for other people. Um, and I know, honey, it was different for you. In that, and just to clarify too, what you went through, honey, was a few years from now, right? A couple years ago.
My son is 7 years old now, and this
Hmm.
all happened when he was very young.
Hmm.
I left because my ex was very abusive, so I left when my son was only like a couple months old, like 3, 4 months old. And then I was kind of like off, like living like wherever I could stay. And that whole period of time, like with the court process and everything until things were like normal, where we had like 1 week on and 1 week off, was probably about like a year.
A year.
Um, and
Yeah.
that was a while ago. Yeah, that was all when he was a year old. So yeah, this is all not fresh, but even though this is not something that is like continuing in the course, since things have been calm, for lack of better terms, it's always like there are always things that I'm afraid of, and over my shoulder, constant looking over my shoulder, because at any moment, if I do something wrong or, whatever, he can
Right.
take me to court, and, it's like the same thing over and over again. And I
Right.
actually, honestly, I almost kind of wish we didn't have mediators, Luna. Like, I almost wish we didn't, because I feel like that because the mediator was like, you're not doing anything wrong, girl. You're totally fine. I feel like if that wasn't the attitude, I would have been afraid more, and I would have gotten a lawyer, and maybe the lawyer would have fought for me more, because I was just I was so confident that I didn't have anybody. I was there in court by myself,
Yep.
and like just I'm like I was like an idiot. I was like, I'm representing myself. I'm his mom. I'm not doing anything wrong. There's no reason for me to get a lawyer. Plus, I can't afford it anyway. And then,
I
like, yeah,
literally did that.
destroyed.
I literally just did that this past Monday on the 7th. That was our I went in and I totally lost my shit. I tried to be calm, but I didn't. It was
Yeah.
not a good birthday present though, that's for sure.
Yeah.
They had gave me court on my birthday, like how mean.
Yeah.
I thought it was mean.
So that was mean. That was all of it's mean, first of all
Yeah.
of it, regardless what day it is. Yeah. But
Yeah.
would you both say that, like, so if we're speaking to other people who may either be going through this now, have gone through this, maybe they're not a mom yet and they will go through this, and they'll remember back to the time when they listened to you to share your story. Would you recommend that you do? have a lawyer that's like on your side, and that so you don't go and do this alone?
And I would do one that you pay, because the one that I had for free, I mean, to be honest, while it was happening, I thought that she was taking care of me. But looking back now, I really feel like she did a disservice for me, and I'm quite
Yeah.
disappointed in her.
What about you,
I would
honey?
say that's the thing. I would say get a lawyer, yes, but
No,
they're expensive.
yes, very
Their lawyers are
expensive.
expensive. They cost money. You know, oftentimes if you're, I don't want to speak for anybody, but people oftentimes leaving abusive relationships don't have expendable money, like to have, just hire a lawyer. So if you have the means to get one, of course, get one. But again, there's, especially if you're getting a public defender or somebody who's appointed to you, you're at risk of having that prejudice and having somebody who's not going to maybe work as hard for you because they're like, well, maybe she doesn't need her kid anyway, so it's scary. It's like, what do you, if you can't afford a lawyer, you're kind of at the whoever is hearing you talk.
Right. And so I'm, the natural instinct of me is like, how do we fix this? How do we change this? And I and I realize that it's not a simple thing, but honestly, like, what can be done, or like, and is this something that either of you have thought about, and not just for yourselves, which of course, obviously you're thinking for yourselves as much as, I'm not trying to diminish, self-care and thoughts by any means, but like, is there like, what do you all think, and if you could even answer this, but like, what can be done, what do we need to do, who do we need to, whose door do we need to knock on, like, what phone call do we need to make, because this is fucking bullshit that your
My,
strippers, your sex
you,
workers, and your wonderful,
We need to
beautiful
find
people.
AOC.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, okay, legally, it's a lot. I mean, like a lot. Like, where do you even start? Like, so much, like just protections. I don't know. But I feel like just in general, like for everyone, just people respecting us. And I feel like I've said this before, like in just talking with you, AM, that if people just in general respected strippers more, and it wasn't something that was like to be like you don't respect yourself, or like all the stereotypes that come with it, if there weren't all these negative stereotypes and fucked up mentality to begin with, then it wouldn't be such a hurdle when you're going through a court here, not even just when you have kids, but there are people who are going to court for eviction proceedings, or like roommate squabbles or whatever, and they're using, oh well, she's a stripper as or they're a stripper or whatever as the excuse that you're a bad person. So just that idea in general, and it sounds so easy and cheesy, like, oh, just getting everyone to like love strippers, but that's literally it. Like, if we respected that, that's how every like marginalized group gains any type of power. Is just more and more people are like, we respect this community, there's nothing wrong with this community, we're here, we're not bad mothers, we're not like bad people. Like, I'm sure there are bad mothers and bad people everywhere, but like, we are people just like anyone else, and we shouldn't be judged by our profession before any content of our character or anything else. And yeah, as simple as it sounds, it's honestly the only, like, that's the foot in the door of getting people like the fucking judge or the that lawyer to be like, okay, I'm gonna work for you, and I'm gonna take the fucking time to read your case file even.
Right. Yeah.
the
What do you
only thing I was thinking in my case is that eventually I could try to sue the judge and the referee. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of doing, but that's not going to be something quick because that's expensive. But yeah, because I
Right.
feel like they did not do justice at all. Neither one of them.
I called the ACLU and I left them a message,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to call them every day because
Yeah, I called them twice too. Yeah.
yeah, because like,
and I'm the things I'm about to say too and inquire about also go out to the reason we're doing this is so more people can hear these stories and offer solutions that I'm over here fumbling, right? I can't even compile the right sentence to get because I'm so furious and like my brain is like scrambling to figure out what to do. But like who do we reach out to protect people like our mothers who can't afford proper representation? And if the ACLU isn't going to fucking return phone calls, like
Yeah.
who is there? Who do we turn to
Hmm.
basically?
Yeah. I don't
I
know.
don't know.
What'd you say, honey?
Good fucking question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a lot of the reason why this particular episode is because we need more people to understand the systemic, harmful, damaging routine that seems to be happening. And like you said, honey, it's like, oh, she's a stripper in court, and so that like automatically negates who we are as people because we're a stripper or a sex worker, whatever level of sex worker we are, no matter what sex worker, quite honestly. Um,
Right.
yeah, and so where do we go? So do we just continue to not only be abused at work by our employers, but to also, like it never ends. Yeah, and so I'm really like kind of imploring our audience to like I'm really imploring our audience to write in and to offer suggestions and support. That's honestly why we're having this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. um because it
But
doesn't.
also a broad thing to find a solution for too, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, it is because it doesn't end here with you two as well.
Hmm.
It carries on and carries on and carries on, and this is happening all around the world. um and there's other bigger things for law to be concerned about, you know. um Honey, what I know that you mentioned that you're like still in fear, but I find it very admirable that you two were able to figure something out between you, even though, you both, from what I understand from our conversations, is that you two decided what was best for the child, you know? And I'm just curious just to hear more on that for anybody else who's struggling with um, a relationship such as yours and such as Luna's and her ex.
I will say that it takes a lot more effort on my part because I am the one who's scared of him, and he has the upper hand on that. So like, there's really not much that like he has to do because I am fucking terrified of him. But and even though we have like a calm interaction right now, like as I already said, that fear is still there. So it's me pretty much just trying, like it feels like just being in an abusive relationship, pretty much just like not walking on eggshells, not saying the wrong thing. If I don't have a babysitter and can't pick him up on the day that I'm supposed to pick him up, I would rather take the day off work and just say I can't work today and pick him up than to give him a reason to be like, see, look, you can't take your kid. So I do, like, even though for compared to what it was like before, it's very calm. There's a lot that I do to make it work that I feel like he doesn't see. And it's probably better that way, that he probably thinks that I'm just like chilling and I'm like, oh yeah, we're having such a great, relationship, because it probably makes him feel better too. Like, and I don't want to get on his bad side or anything. You know, if he sees this podcast, I'm sorry, whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
he probably will though, because he like low key just like he's one of the people that like added all my friends on social media, and then like
Isn't it
you
weird
know,
how they stalk you? Like, don't you have a life? Like, why are you all up in my shit, bro? You
well,
had
because
me,
it's
you
like
lost
they
me,
still
go away.
care, you know, in their like abusive mentalities. Like it's like that caveman mentality. Like I
Mhm.
want you, me love you, you know, and it's just like, yeah, but you're being a dick.
Yeah, they think they still have some power or some type of thing over you because they have a child with you. Like, no,
Like, no.
no.
And I think also that might be something that bothers people too, who are abusive, is that a lot of the power that abusers have is that you can't leave them for whatever reason, right? It's like, I can't leave them because of, you know, my family, or I'm scared, or because they told me I was trash, or like whatever. But when you have a kid involved, like you literally, like even when you leave the person, you can't leave them. Like you can't ever just completely cut ties because you have a child. And I feel like they know that, and they also kind of hate it too, because it's like, well, if we didn't have this one tiny human connecting us, I know that I wouldn't have seen you ever again a long ass time ago. And I think they hate that too. And it's
Well,
just like another thing.
actually, my ex, I got him to admit a couple times that he only got me pregnant to keep me, and that I would think the next time before I left him.
Oh my God, that sounds like my ex. My ex,
He
I
said
think he
that.
sounds
It's so
like,
gross.
yeah, that's what men say. That sounds like my ex. He
So
didn't tell me
gross.
that, but he told me that, like, oh my God, he told me that he couldn't have kids, and that like this was like medically like shooting blanks. Like he straight up said, I cannot have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got pregnant, was like, it's a miracle. And I was like, and also like hormones and whatever. And like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he pretty much was like, well, I can't have kids. And we were like together. It wasn't like we were like not together, but it definitely was a surprise on my end for somebody who's like, I can't have children, to I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm suddenly pregnant. And he lies, and he's like, I never told you that I couldn't have kids. I was like, you literally, that's something that I would not forget. You literally said that.
Gaslighting. Oh my God.
The king of it.
Yeah.
King of it.
Shit.
Wow.
He's one of those people that would be like, he would like totally like slap someone in the face, and then they'll be like, why'd you slap me? And he'd be like, what? I didn't
Oh my God,
do
right?
anything, you know? Like,
Yeah, so it's funny that this story, because I'm over here like, how do we get these judges? And now I'm like, okay, so what's up, men? Like, how do we get y'all to like get your shit
get your shit
together?
together. Stop using the justice system. Like the justice system has no place in your fucking abuse. Your child has no place in your fucking abuse.
Yeah.
Like that's a human being. That's not a toy for you to be like, yes, now I have something. Like,
It's really
no.
gross. Yeah, it's so gross.
Yeah, but I will say that I do think that like collectively that this is a male issue collectively, whether you have children or not, and it's to, if you are a dude who gets it, to use your freaking voice and to say shit when you see shit and say shit when you hear shit. And if you sit around and you hear like abusive, fucked up shit and you don't say anything, then you're just as much as a part of the problem. I'm sorry, but you are. And I heard recently in a podcast that I listened to, 50 plus a tip, and they were talking about hashtag not all men. And so it's basically like the same thing as hashtag all lives matter. When you're saying not all men, it's like you're
Lord.
negating the point. The point is we
Oh,
have an issue here. And and men, like, we need you to like to hear these things and to step up and fucking do something as well, even if you're not the perpetrator. Like, say something. um Before we kind of wrap up, is there anything that's like really important that and Luna, because you're going through this right now, and you know, I do want to say to everyone, there is a petition link that I still think people should sign, because you're gonna need that again when he, if and when he schedules another doctor appointment. for circumcision, but also, you have a GoFundMe up because it's really hard to work during a time like this. I mean, I've
Yeah.
talked to you several times when you're like not sleeping and there's paperwork all over your bed trying to figure this out. So I definitely want to make sure our audience knows that, there is that GoFundMe out there and that you do need the support. But I want to make sure before we go, is there anything that is as a part of your story that you feel is really important to share with the audience?
I don't know if I can get through it, so can you. If any of you out there are listening in the same position, I didn't think I could get through it, and here I am going through it.
Yeah. With 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 so much strength, might I add. Um I know this is really
Thank
hard.
you.
Hmm.
Yeah,
You're doing really well.
I really
Yeah.
try. It's
I
really hard, but I got my babies. I got my rats and my little turkeys. they're my pseudo children right now.
Yeah. And honey, what about you? Is there anything that you think that is important to cover that we didn't cover in this episode just yet?
I mean, this could take up like a whole episode, but Luna kind of like touched on it before when you were talking about like the circumcision thing. I just want to like implore people. I'm not even gonna like if you are Jewish, this doesn't apply to you because I'm not touching that one. But if you are not Jewish, you have absolutely no reason to circumcise your child. Just please look into it. If you're going to have a boy, if you're, like there's a lot of damage that is done psychologically. There's plenty of studies you could look into about the first 6 months of a child's life being the most important for forming bonds. There are a lot of ideas as to why American men are more aggressive, why American men tend to have higher rates of a lot of the like so many things, just mostly violent things. So guys, if you like using your dicks, I will just point that out as well. Erectile dysfunction comes scientifically speaking, like there's a lot of things that cause erectile dysfunction, but when you take off it's essentially your penis's eyelid. You're taking off a functioning part of your body that's gonna down the line cause some problems. There's a lot of theories that circumcision and erectile dysfunction are very closely related. There's a lot of evidence to it, not just that, so sexual satisfaction, but as I said, the emotional thing as well. Your infant does not know why they're being strapped to a table and given sugar water and being tortured, and their brain can't process that, and their brain won't be able to process it 20, 30 years down the road. And that's why a lot of males have aggression issues. So I will implore you, please, I sound like a crazy person sometimes, but I think it's very important that if there's no reason for it, if there's no religious reason for it, don't do that to your boys. Look into it. It's a cosmetic procedure. And that's it. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to touch on what you were saying with the toxic masculinity type, what you were saying. Well, when you really think about it, the child comes out of their mother's womb. The first thing we do to them, strap them down, give them an erection, which is their first sexual experience, and cut off a healthy part of their body for literally no reason. Because people there's so many reasons that they have tried to claim that circumcision prevents or can cure, or it's always just something. It's always because of the prudish
Sorry, if
Christianity.
women can,
Yeah,
if women can clean their moist ass pussies,
exactly. It's
men
the
can
same
clean.
thing. Yes, people are just so uneducated. Yes, it's the same thing as a vagina. Yes.
That's what I'm like, y'all seen vaginas, there's flaps and
Everywhere,
folds
right?
and moisture, but all of a sudden we can't keep that clean. It just doesn't make sense. As I said, this could be a whole other fucking episode because there's just so many like, well, what the fuck? Like that makes no sense. Like, yeah, giving them, you have to literally give a baby an erection, and then it's like, well, we just give them sugar water or Advil or whatever the equivalent is, And then when they say, well, they don't feel it. It's like, but babies still feel pain. Like, there's no evidence that says a baby won't feel pain just because they won't remember pain. And parents always say, well, my son, he came back and he was sleeping. And I'm like, no, he came back and he was in shock.
Yeah. Yeah, and he probably shit himself and puked as well.
And not only that, yes, shit, puke, and then you're pissing and shitting on an open wound because you're in a diaper. So, I'm not even against circumcision in general. Circumcision is a totally different topic because that's an adult male's choice whether or not he wants, just as any cosmetic procedure. You want to get your boobs enhanced, you want to get your circumcised, you want to do whatever. It's a cosmetic procedure. But on a child, on a baby who doesn't even know what the fuck a penis is, no, you can, that procedure, if the only excuse is that they won't remember it and they're not going to feel it, that is barbaric.
Because actually both of those things are false, because
It's false.
there's a book out there called The Body Keeps the Score, or The Score, something like that. And every trauma that's happened to you, your body feels it's still there in you. So yes, they don't remember it, but it's still in them and it still affects them. So just oh, and the other thing, I really wanted to get these two links out there. It's yourwholebaby.org and nocircofmichigan.org. And you can find out more information about circumcision and the reasons why we and so many others are becoming educated and learning that this is a barbaric, just not necessary, just disgusting. And we did save our women. In 91, the year I was born, was the last year it was legal in the United States, female genital mutilation.
Wow.
Why don't we save our boys like we saved our girls?
Yeah.
They deserve a whole body that they came with.
Yeah.
It's a human rights thing, man. They didn't consent to this. They can't. They're that small.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, for bringing that topic up. Yeah, that's very important. And I learned a lot through what you're going through, Luna, and reading articles and comments from grown men who are against their own circumcision that happened to them as a baby without a choice, and like hearing from their own voices as well, like what it was like for them to really connect with that trauma. And so I really learned a lot, and I'm grateful to understand that more. And I really hope that other people will start to pay attention to that and understand that more as well. And maybe that is the reason that our men are, well, one of the reasons. I'm not
right.
That, like, they're just all nuts out there. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. So
that doesn't help.
I know, exactly. Can we please tell everyone how we can support both of you? Like, honey, can we talk about your store? Your rainbow crochet tank top is looking so beautiful. Tell us how we can support you and follow you, and then we'll do Luna next.
You can follow me on Instagram at honey_less_strange. And my Etsy is on there. The Etsy shop is called The Odd Honey Pot. It's kind of a handful to say. And yeah, I take custom crochet orders, and I'm doing resin art and a bunch of stuff like that. And I am also getting back into drumming, so trying to figure out if I want to do like a YouTube thing or just like Instagram lives or whatever. But my Cash Apps and my Venmos are always open for financial needs for me. So yeah.
Thank you. And Luna, how can we support you, your art, and your GoFundMe?
My Instagram is going to be the best place because I have my link tree there in my bio, and it's Color Me Mama Studio.
Awesome.
My Redbubble page is on there, and I have the petition, and I also have the GoFundMe as well.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for like sitting with me and educating me and sharing your stories with all of these people out there. I know this is not an easy thing to talk about. So I really appreciate everything. Seriously. Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening out there. Please make sure that you follow these two amazing mothers and support them on their journey, and all the mothers out there that need our support and love. And thank you so much for listening. As always, see you next Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone. This episode has been a production with Period Podcast Network. Find out more on Instagram at Period Podcast Network. Be sure to follow us on Instagram too at YAS, a stripper podcast, and you can find us on Twitter at YAS, a stripper pod. Please like, subscribe, and rate YAS, a stripper podcast here on YouTube. See you next week.